terrifying mysteries of Cannock Chase. The moon is a sliver above the skeletal pines. You're halfway between the visitor centre and the old German war cemetery. The air smells of damp earth and something ancient. Then a child's voice seeps through the dark. "Can you help me find my mum?" You turn, heart hammering. 10 metres away, a little girl in a threadbare party dress stands in the faint moonlight. Her feet are bare on the freezing ground. Her eyes are oil-black holes that seem to drink your torchlight. She tilts her head, her smile stretching too wide, and whispers, "Let me in." Welcome to Cannock Chase, 30 square miles of ancient woodland that's a picture-perfect postcard by day, but a fever dream after midnight. Today, we're opening 5 case files that chronicle the truly bizarre happenings here, some stretching back to 1879. We're talking black-eyed children, a creature locals call the Cannock werewolf, a British Bigfoot, a downed UFO shrouded in government secrecy, and an ancient hill fort that seems to be a supernatural turnstile. So grab your thermos, keep your torch low, and whatever you do, stay close. The chase has a habit of separating the curious from the sensible, and sometimes it doesn't let them go. Black-Eyed Children Cannock Chase first earned modern notoriety in 2014 when paranormal researcher Lee Brickley released a chilling witness statement. A lone rambler reported a girl matching the description you just heard approached his car near Birches Valley. Imagine the scene, the isolation, the dark, and then a small, pale figure. She knocked 3 times on his window and asked for a lift. When he refused, she didn't just walk away. She screamed, a guttural, inhuman sound. As her shriek echoed, the car windows fogged over instantly, and the radio flipped to pure white noise. When the mist cleared, she was gone, leaving only bare footprints that vanished abruptly into the trees. Locals link these terrifying children to a few disturbing triggers. One theory points to a diphtheria outbreak in the 1800s that claimed the lives of many children whose bodies were buried in unmarked graves. Another grim possibility ties them to the legacy of Raymond Leslie Morris, a child killer who, in the 1960s, dumped his victims' bodies on these very tracks. But perhaps the most unsettling theory centres on Castle Ring, an ancient Iron Age hill fort. Its eastern ramparts are rumoured to be a soft place where the veil between worlds is thin. Investigators have recorded inexplicable electromagnetic field EMF spikes at the ring, matching spikes reported during black-eyed child encounters, suggesting a shared otherworldly source. Whatever their origin, the pattern is creepily consistent. It's always a lone person after dusk. There's a sudden, inexplicable drop in temperature. Then, the child appears, asking for help, seemingly innocent until you see their eyes. Black voids that absorb light and hope. They instill a profound, primal fear, leaving witnesses feeling physically ill and mentally scarred. One boy chillingly told a forestry worker in 2019, "See you at home." The man was so terrified, he drove 40 miles to his sister's house and refused to return to his own. If you ever have such an encounter, folklore is clear. Do not invite them in. Do not offer them food. Do not touch them. The recommended response is to break eye contact, speak firmly with a command like "go home," and walk backwards until you can safely retreat. Most importantly, believe what you're seeing. Witnesses who dismiss the children as pranks tend to report poltergeist activity for weeks afterwards, as if the entities are punishing their disbelief. The Cannock werewolf. Now we're tracking something bigger and far more primal. In 2006, a postman jogging along old coal route trails saw what he described as a grey, naked man on all fours sprinting across his path. But this was no man. Its limbs were too long, its head was wolf-heavy with a disturbingly long muzzle. It covered 30 metres in an impossible 4 bounds and vanished into the bracken. Authorities later found and photographed distinct paw prints, a 4-toed pad roughly 17 centimetres across, far larger than any native dog. Werewolf stories in Staffordshire predate the Normans. The Domesday Book lists Cannock as Wodwos, a term meaning man of the woods. By the 1800s, parishes recorded livestock found torn apart by something of considerable power. The modern flare-up began in 1975 when army cadets on a night exercise heard howling their sergeant logged as non-canine. Since then, sightings of this creature cluster around the hunter's moon in autumn and the wolf moon in late January, as if its activity is tied to ancient rhythms. Cryptozoologists favour 2 main explanations. One suggests an escaped Eurasian wolf, possibly hybridised with a feral mastiff, creating an apex predator of unusual size and intelligence. The other, more esoteric theory, posits a residual haunt of medieval wolf's head outlaws, banished men who hid in the chase and were declared no more valuable than a wolf. Their desperate, wild existence may have imprinted on the landscape, manifesting as this creature. Walkers deep in the chase sometimes report a thick, suffocating musk. Disturbingly, deer carcasses occasionally appear stripped to the spine overnight, yet no scavengers will touch them, as if they recognise a more dominant hunter. British Bigfoot. You might think Cannock Chase is too small to hide a Bigfoot, but its topography lends itself to concealment. The centre of the chase is a shallow basin carved by glaciers. Running through it are drainage gullies called grumbles that drop 3 metres below sightline, creating natural, hidden pathways perfect for something large to move unseen. The earliest report dates to 1879. A coal trammer saw an hairy man 8 feet high step over a 5-bar gate as if it were a stick. He recalled its eyes reflected his lantern light like glowing coals. More recently, in 1995, a nurse nearly collided with a figure covered in auburn hair with breasts striding across the road. She thought it was a prank until it vanished uphill with impossible speed, convincing her it was no human. Paranormal researcher Nick Redfern interviewed 20 witnesses and found startling consistencies: a strong sulfuric odour, strange tree knocks used for communication, and even rock throwing. One camper recorded unusual whoops on his phone. Spectrogram analysis showed similarities to North American Bigfoot vocalizations, but with a higher frequency, perhaps indicating a related but different species. Skeptics point to misidentified big cats, as sightings of panther-like animals are common, but a panther doesn't snap saplings 8 feet off the ground or leave 48cm barefoot prints in soft clay. A more fascinating theory suggests the Cannock Bigfoot is a tulpa, a thought form manifested by collective belief. Could centuries of wildman folklore have willed this creature into existence? The 1964 UFO crash. The mysteries here aren't just terrestrial. At 2:03 AM on March 7th, 1964, RAF radar tracked a fast-moving, unidentified target. It slowed, made an impossible turn, then dropped off the scope right over the edge of Cannock Chase. Locals reported 2 deafening booms and a brilliant flash of light like magnesium. By dawn, the military had cordoned off a drainage ditch near Penkridge. Witnesses reported seeing a tarpaulin-shrouded, delta-shaped object loaded onto a lorry along with 3 body-sized bags. A man who photographed the object had his film confiscated, and all witnesses were warned under the Official Secrets Act. Decades later, a US Navy petty officer named Jason Bilton came forward. He claimed NATO forces had recovered not just wreckage, but 3 small humanoids from the crash, which were ferried to a secret facility in West Germany. The craft, he alleged, was taken by Defence Intelligence for reverse engineering. The UK Ministry of Defence, of course, maintains it holds no records of any such incident, which only fuels speculation of a cover-up. Since 1964, UFO sightings around the chase have concentrated, particularly near Castle Ring. Orbs of light, silent triangular craft, and a green saucer have all been reported. Some investigators link these to the chase's ironstone deposits, which under geological stress could generate electromagnetic fields and earthlights. Others believe the ring is a portal, a gateway for visitors from other worlds. Castle Ring and peripheral oddities. Castle Ring, an Iron Age hill fort, is the chase's magnetic north for weirdness. Its ditches, dug 2,500 years ago, form a perfect bowl. Clap your hands in the centre and the echo resonates like a heartbeat. Dowsers report powerful energy currents, while skeptics note temperature inversions that create acoustic anomalies. But both groups agree. The place feels watched. Its spectral inhabitants are varied. Ghostly monks have been seen drifting through the earthworks. An infamous white lady hitchhiker appears on lonely roads asking for a lift before vanishing from the passenger seat. In 2020, a couple practicing Tai Chi at dawn recorded a translucent figure of a child skipping in circles. The eerie video gained 2 million views before it was inexplicably buried by the platform's algorithm. If that weren't enough, there are the big cats. We're not just talking blurry photos, but clear, pantherine shapes on trail cams. More disturbingly, 12cm claw marks have been found gouged into pines 5 metres above the ground. Either these cats can levitate, or something with opposable thumbs is climbing trees for a vantage point, adding another layer of mystery to this paranormal landscape. Cannock Chase isn't just a forest, it's a mosaic of micro-environments. Dense conifer plantations give way to open moorland, then dip into bogs and the remnants of Victorian coal tips. Paranormalists love this liminality, this sense of being in between. When habitats overlap so dramatically, it seems timelines do too. 1 minute you're among 19th century beaches, the next you're passing overgrown 1940s bomb craters. History bleeds through. The ground itself is a tapestry of trauma. Roman mines, medieval gallows, and modern murder sites have layered this land with anguish, perhaps acting as a psychic battery for whatever walks here after dusk. Staffordshire police receive, on average, 4 distressed walker calls a month from the chase. Most are mundane, but a significant minority involve people too shaken to rationalise what they saw. While the official stance is calm and rational, privately, officers swap stories of patrol cars stalling inexplicably near Castle Ring, or radios whispering the names of deceased colleagues. Seasoned cops will quietly reroute their night shifts to avoid certain car parks after 1 AM, an unspoken acknowledgement of something they can't explain but deeply fear. That tells you more than any official dossier ever could. Still want to visit? The chase is gorgeous by daylight. Start at the old railway cafe for their legendary bacon baps. Stick to marked trails, especially after 4 PM, when GPS signals can fail. Always bring foil blankets. The temperature can plummet 8 degrees in minutes in a phenomenon locals call chase drop. If thick fog rolls in, stop moving. Sit down and wait for it to thin. Should the black-eyed children approach, remember, no invitation, no contact. Project Confidence. Fear is an invitation. For the werewolf, folklore suggests carrying a small mirror as the creature dislikes its own reflection. A flash of light can also ruin its night vision, giving you a chance to escape. Against Bigfoot, make yourself as loud and human as possible. Sing an embarrassing chart hit, badly. The absurdity might be enough to send it lumbering away. Above all, leave the place as you found it. The chase seems to retaliate against disrespect. Litterbugs report their gear mysteriously breaking and phone batteries draining to 0 in seconds. Treat the forest with respect and you might leave with nothing worse than muddy boots and a great story. Cannock Chase is a mirror. Stare long enough into its depths and something stares back. Whether it's black-eyed kids, a wolf that walks like a man, or lights that defy physics, this forest refuses to be ordinary. It holds its secrets close, but sometimes it lets them out to play. Next time you pass a signpost for the chase, consider a daytime hike, but be warned. When the sun slips behind the pines, the chase remembers every secret you hoped it had forgotten. If this journey into the dark heart of Cannock Chase has chilled you, share it with that friend who brags they're not scared of anything. Let's see how they feel at 2 a.m. Drop your own encounters and theories in the comments, smash that like button, and subscribe for more journeys into Britain's eerie corners. Until next time, keep to the lit paths and never invite strangers into your car. Imagine this, you wake up in the pitch black of night, miles from anyone, and you're moving, you're being carried away, trapped inside your own sleeping bag, completely powerless and at the mercy of something that isn't quite human. This is the unbelievable story of Albert Ostman. In 1924, a tough-as-nails prospector walked into the Canadian wilderness searching for a lost gold mine. He came back with a story so wild he kept it secret for over 30 years. Why? He was afraid no one would ever believe he'd been kidnapped by a Sasquatch. But what if he wasn't lying? Albert Ostman wasn't some guy who made things up. He was a seasoned outdoorsman, a Swedish immigrant who'd spent years in rugged logging and construction camps. By his own admission, he didn't believe in the Indian fables about mountain giants, but a string of bizarre events at his campsite would kick off a terrifying 6-day ordeal that would change his life forever. The year was 1924. For a lot of men, the vast, untamed wilderness of British Columbia was a place to find fortune and solitude. Albert Ostman was one of them. He'd come over from Sweden and was no stranger to hard work. He decided he needed a vacation, a working vacation, and set his sights on the remote Toba Inlet, a deep fjord cutting into the coast mountains. Toba Inlet was, and still is, incredibly isolated. You can only get there by water or air. It's a land of stunning beauty, but also a place of deep-seated legends. Ostman was chasing rumours of a lost gold mine, a classic frontier story about a prospector who would vanish and come back with a bag full of gold until one day he didn't come back at all. To get there, Ostman hired an elderly indigenous man to boat him to the head of the inlet. The journey itself felt like a warning. The guide told Ostman stories about the area, including what some people thought happened to the last gold seeker. Some folks, the guide said, believed a Sasquatch had gotten him. Ostman was sceptical. He'd never even heard the word Sasquatch before and asked what it meant. The man described them as big, hairy people who lived in the mountains, not animals but a different kind of human. He mentioned his uncle seeing tracks 2 feet long and an elder spotting one over 8 feet tall. Ostman brushed it all off as folklore. That might have been thousands of years ago, he thought, but not today. The guide just said, there may not be many, but they still exist. After getting dropped off, Ostman told the guide to come back for him in about 3 weeks. As the boat disappeared down the inlet, he was truly alone. He spent the next few days prospecting, searching for the lost mine. The guide's warnings probably a distant echo in his mind, but as the days turned to night, those echoes were about to get a whole lot louder. For the first few days, everything was normal. Ostman was an experienced woodsman and knew the sounds of the forest. But then, things started to feel off. The feeling that he was the only person for miles around began to disappear. It started small. One morning he woke up to find his camp disturbed. Someone had gone through his pack sack. A few things were missing, nothing valuable, just half a pound of prunes and some pancake flour. His first thought? A porcupine. Annoyed, he secured his camp better that night, thinking he could outsmart some animal. The next morning, it happened again. More food gone. But this time, his matches had been moved, as if someone had inspected them. This was no porcupine, and a bear would have torn the whole camp to shreds. This was different, methodical. A cold knot of fear started to twist in his gut. He was being watched. That night, Ostman sat up with his rifle, determined to catch the thief. But after days of prospecting and nights of growing anxiety, exhaustion won. He crawled into his sleeping bag, gear within arm's reach, and drifted into an uneasy sleep. He was a heavy sleeper, but something woke him in the dead of night. Not a sound, but a feeling. He was moving. He was being carried. Before he could even process it, The reality hit him like a ton of bricks. He was inside his sleeping bag, slung over the shoulder of something immensely powerful, like a sack of potatoes. Panic set in. He was being abducted. He couldn't see, could barely breathe, and could feel the powerful, rhythmic strides of his captor as it climbed steadily uphill. The journey was rough. He was jostled and bumped around, wondering if his bones would break. All he could smell was a strong, wild odour of sweat, earth, and fur. For what he guessed was 3 hours, the terrifying journey went on. 3 hours of being carried through the dark, a prisoner in his own bedding. His mind raced with one terrifying question, planted there by his guide's warning. What in God's name was this thing the man called Sasquatch? The journey finally ended. Osman felt himself being set down, and his pack was dropped beside him with a clatter of tin cans. Then he heard voices, a strange guttural chatter that was clearly a language, but one he'd never heard before. His captor let go of the sleeping bag, and he rolled down a short slope. Frantically, he wriggled his head out for a gasp of air, his legs numb and useless. As he lay there, terrified, he realised he was surrounded. He could hear at least 4 of them. As dawn broke, he saw where he was, a small, bowl-shaped valley, like a natural fortress, with only one way in or out, and then he saw them, his captors. It was a family. There was the one he'd call the Old Man. He was huge, a towering figure Osman estimated at nearly 8 feet tall, with a massive chest and shoulders covered in dark brown hair. His head peaked at the top, slanting up from a narrow forehead, a feature now known as a sagittal crest, common in male apes. This was the patriarch, the one who carried him here. There was also an old lady, smaller, with wider hips and breasts. She looked unhappy, as if she didn't approve of her husband dragging a human home. And there were 2 younger ones, a boy and a girl. Osman guessed the young fellow was like a teenager, maybe 7 feet tall. The girl was smaller and shy. They all stared at him with a mix of fear and curiosity. This was his new reality, a prisoner of a family of legendary creatures. For 6 days, Albert Osman lived among them. His terror slowly shifted to cautious observation. They weren't going to hurt him, but they also weren't letting him leave. Every time he edged toward the valley's exit, the old man would grunt and take a step toward him, a clear warning. He watched their daily routine. The female seemed to handle the chores, gathering piles of ferns and moss. Their diet seemed to be vegetarian. They dug for roots and ate tender shoots. They even offered him a sweet-tasting grass, which he ate to save his own supplies. The young ones were playful, often wrestling and chasing each other. The boy, especially, was fascinated by Osman, creeping closer to get a better look. Their language was a constant stream of whoops, whistles, and guttural sounds. The thought of using his rifle definitely crossed his mind. He had bullets. Maybe he could shoot the old man and run for it, but he decided against it. They hadn't hurt him. What if he only wounded the giant? What if he killed it and the others attacked him? He was 1 man against 4 in their territory. It was a risk he wasn't willing to take. So he waited, watched, and desperately tried to think of a way out. He was a castaway on an island of giants, and his only hope was to outsmart them. After nearly a week, Osman's food was almost gone, and so was his hope. He knew he needed to create a major distraction to escape the old man's constant watch. An idea sparked, centered on a small box in his pack. His snuff, a finely ground tobacco. He'd noticed the old man's intense curiosity. The creature mimicked his actions. So Osman hatched a plan. He started making a big show of taking a pinch of snuff, acting like it was the best thing he'd ever tasted. He made sure the old man was watching. Finally, the moment came. The old man grunted and gestured toward the box. He wanted some. Osman's heart pounded as he held it out. He hoped the creature would just take a pinch, but the Sasquatch grabbed the entire box and dumped the whole thing into his mouth. The effect was instant and violent. The potent tobacco hit the creature's system hard. His eyes rolled back in his head, and he let out a squeal like a stuck pig. He grabbed Osman's cold coffee can and chugged it, grounds and all, but it didn't help. The giant doubled over and staggered toward a spring for water. This was it. It was now or never. As the family fell into chaos, Osman lunged for his gear. He frantically stuffed his sleeping bag and supplies into his pack. The old lady saw him and started to move toward him. Not wanting to hurt her, he raised his rifle and fired a shot over her head. The deafening crack echoed through the valley. The female, terrified, ran for cover. Osman didn't look back. He bolted through the narrow pass and ran for his life, crashing through the dense forest, adrenaline pumping through him. He ran for hours until he stumbled upon a logging operation, a sign he was back in the world of men. He was exhausted and shaken to his core, but he didn't tell the loggers what really happened. He just said he was a prospector who got lost. They bought it. For more than 30 years, Albert Osman told no one the full story. He tried a few times in logging camps but was met with laughter and accused of being drunk or crazy. So he buried the story deep inside. A 6-day nightmare he had to live with alone. He'd survived the abduction, but now he was in a new prison, one of silence. For 33 years, Albert Osman's incredible story stayed a secret. It wasn't until 1957, when Bigfoot stories started hitting the mainstream, that he felt the world might finally be ready to listen. He came forward not for fame or money, but to finally get the story off his chest. He gave his account to a newspaper, and most importantly, swore to its truth in a legal affidavit. On August 20th, 1957, a police magistrate named A.M. Naismith officially took his statement. Naismith noted he found Osman to be of sound mind and questioned him intensely. He wrote, "I cross-examined him and used every means to endeavour to find a flaw in either his personality or his story, but could find neither. Osman stuck to every detail of his account until his death in 1975. So, is the story true? Skeptics have plenty of reasons to doubt it. The most obvious issue is the 33-year gap before he told anyone. Couldn't he have imagined it all? Others point to the complete lack of physical evidence, no hair, no photos, and the escape using a box of snuff sounds more like a tall tale than a real event. Primatologist John Napier even questioned the story, arguing there wouldn't have been enough food in a valley like that to support a family of giant primates. But those who believe him have strong counter-arguments. His silence makes perfect sense. In 1924, there was no popular idea of Bigfoot, and telling a story like that would have gotten him labelled as crazy. The fact that he never wanted money for his story and even gave a sworn statement lends him a lot of credibility. Plus, many details in his story are surprisingly consistent with thousands of other eyewitness reports that have come out since. His description of a tall, hairy primate with a peaked head wasn't common knowledge then, but it perfectly matches what we might expect from an unknown primate. His account of their language, a complex mix of whoops and whistles, and their family structure also fits with modern theories about great apes. So what are we to believe? Was Albert Osman a brilliant liar who made up an elaborate hoax for no reason? Was he a man who had a mental break in the wilderness, or was he telling the absolute truth? An ordinary man who had an extraordinary encounter with a species unknown to science, still hiding in the deepest corners of North America. His story is a cornerstone of Bigfoot lore, a detailed account that continues to fascinate and baffle researchers. It's been debated for over 60 years, but we're no closer to a final answer. The legend of Albert Osman survives because it taps into the deep mystery of our world's wild places and the unsettling idea that we might not be the only intelligent beings walking this earth. What do you think? Was Albert Osman telling the truth? What would you have done if you were in his shoes? Let us know your theories in the comments. And if you enjoyed this investigation, make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's greatest unsolved mysteries. The Giant of Kandahar and the mystery that surrounds them. Picture this, August 2002, the Kandahar Mountains. 8 soldiers from a routine patrol stroll into the hills, radios crackling like normal. By the next scheduled check-in, nothing, dead air. 48 hours later, a 12-man Spec Ops team is launched to find them. They don't discover Taliban fighters, they don't find the missing guys. Instead, they find a cave, and inside that cave, something 15 feet tall, fire engine red hair, 6 fingers per hand, and the smell of a slaughterhouse in July. It allegedly took a full mag dump, 30 seconds of sustained fire, to drop it. Since then, the tale's been passed around like contraband. Standard recon. Check the passes for bombs, eyeball any Taliban movement. Every hour on the hour they checked in, same calm voice, same routine. Then at 14:42, contact East Ridge, small arms, moving to higher ground, click, silence. No mayday, no beacon chirp, gone. Back at base, the ops officer kicks off a satellite sweep. Thermals, infrared, everything. Zip. No heat, no tyre tracks, no sign 8 kitted out soldiers ever existed. By nightfall, the 8 are listed missing, presumed captured. Command spins up the cavalry. SEALs, Rangers, one very confused cryptologic linguist. Their briefing is 2 sentences long. Expect anything. The locals are spooked. Dawn again. The rescue birds drop the new guys into a dry riverbed 3 clicks south of the last known grid. First oddity, an M4 balanced neatly on a rock. Magazine seated, safety on. No brass, no blood, like someone set it there on purpose. 50 metres on, MVG's cracked in half and a single boot, laces still tied. Then a helmet with a fresh gouge across the Kevlar. Every comms box, SATCOM, PRC 117S, clunky Blue Force tracker, is missing. The team follows the breadcrumb trail uphill into a canyon locals call the Scar. Walls close in, the air gets heavy. At the far end, a cave mouth yawns, 20 feet high, edges polished by centuries of wind. Outside, 3 torn open MREs, a sleeve of US camo, the patrol's flag patch. Fresh scuffs angle into the dark. The point man kneels, runs a gloved finger through dust. 2 things freeze him, a boot print 3 sizes larger than any issued gear, and a single strand of red hair thick enough to tow a truck. They stack at the mouth, pop a flashbang, count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, then roll in. IR lasers flick across a limestone chamber the size of a high school gym. The smell lands first, rotting fruit, wet earth, pennies left in rain, bones everywhere, sheep, goat, something too big for either. 10 metres in, they stop dead. Against the back wall looms, well, imagine an NBA player stretched in Photoshop. Add an extra foot, then some. 15 feet tall, shoulders scraping the ceiling, skin like saddle leather. Hair, thick red ropes, drapes to the waist. Hands, 6 fingers apiece, nails black as burnt matches. Teeth, 2 glittering rows. The thing's carrying a spear taller than most men. Obsidian tip still dripping something you don't want to think about. Beat of silence. Then the spear punches clean through the team leader, lifts him like a carnival prize. The cave erupts into controlled chaos. M4s hammering, MP5s chattering, sidearms barking. The giant howls, part lion, part grinding gearbox, absorbs round after round, keeps coming. 1 backhand whips the linguist's helmet clean off, scalp attached. 30 seconds later, the creature folds, skull ventilated, blackish blood pooling like tar. The surviving 8 grab their dead and drag them toward daylight, gagging on the stench and the impossible. An MH-47 Chinook beats overhead. Call sign, Dark Horse 34. Crew chief drops a sling. No one's asking questions tonight. The giant's wrapped in a cargo net first. Then 2 body bags go on top. Before liftoff, a civilian in contractor jeans and spotless boots hops aboard and hands each survivor a 1-page NDA. It's short, nasty. Speak a word, wife, chaplain, therapist, and you're looking at 10 years in Leavenworth. Everybody signs. Back at base, the load transfers to an unmarked C-130. No ramp ceremony, no flags, just an icy glare from the loadmaster. Flight plan, Diego Garcia. After that, radio silence. The 8 missing, their families get telegrams. Killed in action, enemy contact, no details, no bodies, no closure. 2 decades of hush money and nightmares. A ranger brags in a Georgia bar until his sergeant shuts him up with a single look. A SEAL mentions the tall guy in a psych eval and the doc scribbles, combat stress, disregard. Then 2016, retired Air Force officer Mr. K calls coast to coast, AM, story matches, cave, hair, 6 fingers, 30 seconds of hell, claims the corpse flew to Wright Pat first, then to somewhere in Nevada. Host asks why, no photos leak. Mr. K laughs, they took our phones. Even the Predator feed went dark for 47 minutes. The broadcast cracks the dam. Blogs explode, podcasts spawn, YouTube throws up grainy reenactments. Top video, Kandahar Giant, proof they don't want you to see, sits at 3.7 million views, age restricted, comments swinging from totally fake to my brother was there, swear on my mum. I spent weeks chasing ghosts. FOIA requests came back looking like redacted ransom notes, entire paragraphs blacked except for Afghanistan 2002 and one stray possible. A leaked SIGACT log for August 18th reads, possible IED cache discovered, no enemy contact. No Rough Rider, no giants, no nothing. I called 6 names from the rescue manifest. 4 ghosted, a 5th emailed. I can neither confirm nor deny classified operations. The 6th ex-SEAL, now doing security in Dubai, went off record, voice disguised. He confirmed every detail, right down to the double row of chompers. Why the silence? NDA's ironclad, and who'd believe us anyway? You read YouTube comments lately. Here's where it gets downright biblical. Literalists point to Numbers 13:33. There we saw the Nephilim, and we were like grasshoppers. Descriptions sync up, giants, red hair, extra digits. Apocrypha spins juicier tales of the Rephaim and Anakim, wiped out in Joshua's conquest. Could this thing be the last cousin twice removed? Academics scoff. No hominid ever hit 15 feet. Gigantopithecus, the king of fossil apes, topped out at 10 and vanished 100,000 years ago. But Afghanistan's caves are a subway system no one's fully mapped. Locals still whisper about Deokai, wild men who nick goats and hate sunlight. Coelacanths were extinct for 66 million years until fishermen started hauling them up like weird lobsters. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, it's just a dare. Look, the US military hides stuff the way squirrels hide nuts, compulsively. Manhattan Project stayed dark for years. The F-117 flew for 7 before the brass admitted its existence. A 15-foot biped though? That's next level. Imagine the headlines. US troops kill biblical giant. Cue every imam, pastor and late-night host spinning holy war clickbait. Easier to bury the body, gag the witnesses, chalk it up to war fog, and the cleanup is airtight. Rough Riders' families get form letters and folded flags. Rescue team files read TDY, location classified. Even the Chinooks maintenance log for August 18th has one icy line. Cargo, sensitive, priority alpha, FOIA. That I dare you. Feels like we're pulling a thread that leads somewhere dark, right? Subscribe. Next week we're dropping the leaked sketches of the autopsy that supposedly happened at Wright-Patterson. You'll want a front row seat. Let's play devil's advocate. No photos, no DNA, no body. Every witness is either anonymous or legally gagged. Convenient, right? Anthropologists note Pashtun men often dye their beards with henna. Maybe a tall, red-bearded local got exaggerated into a campfire myth. Details drift. Some say the giant wore buffalo hide moccasins, others swear it was naked. Timeline jumps from 2002 to 2004 depending on beer intake. Maybe the whole thing is just soldiers spooking each other until the internet ran with it. But then why do the dots keep connecting? Same creature, same height, same 6 fingers, across decades and continents, mass hallucination or something real wearing a really good disguise? You decide. 2 theories duke it out online. 1. The corpse is in the same chilled hangar at Area 51 that allegedly stores the Roswell junk. 2. It's under the Vatican, whose vaults supposedly brim with Nephilim bones. Sounds loony until you find out the church quietly funded the 2014 Denisovan cave dig in Siberia. Why would Rome care? Because if giants are real, Genesis might need a footnote, and the church wants to write it. I found the widow of a Rough Rider soldier. She agreed to talk only if her name stayed buried. They told me he died a hero, she whispers. But no body, no tags, just a flag and a form letter. 20 years on, she still scours Afghan news sites at 3 AM, hoping for a scrap. The real tragedy isn't the giant, it's the empty chairs at the dinner table, the birthdays without dads, the brothers who can't even tell their wives why they wake up screaming. String the pieces together and a picture forms. The military stumbled on something that broke the mould, something that mocked biology and theology in one ugly package. Rather than face global chaos, they buried the body, silenced the witnesses, and rolled the missing into the anonymous butcher's bill of war. And like most classified horrors, it would have stayed buried if nightmares didn't keep leaking out. Got a relative who rotated through Kandahar 2002 to 2004? Ask them, gently, what rumours followed them home. Drop what you hear in the comments, the truth might still be hiding in the gaps between stories. And if you want more dives like this, hit subscribe and ring the bell. Next week we're rolling out those Wright Patterson sketches. You won't want to miss what's on them. The terrifying stories from the land between the lakes. It was a sticky Kentucky morning, the summer of '82, the air so thick with humidity you could practically swim through it. Two park rangers doing a routine patrol caught the sharp, metallic smell of a copper penny drifting off a stalled RV parked awkwardly on a turnout. It was a smell that cut through the sweet decay of the forest floor, a smell that meant something was wrong. What they discovered inside that vehicle and just outside of it would never make the 6 o'clock news. It would never make any news. They found a father and son torn to pieces with a brutality that defied any animal they knew, and the little girl, she was gone, vanished, until one of them, fighting back nausea, happened to look up. Her body was wedged impossibly high in the branches of an old oak, placed there with a deliberateness that was somehow more terrifying than the violence below. The official paperwork for the incident never existed. The case was never opened because it was never filed. But the locals, they know. They say it was the beast of LBL. And if you know these woods, if you felt their oppressive silence after dark, you know better than to call it just a campfire story. Most folks who visit the land between the lakes, LBL for short, see exactly what the tourism board wants them to see. It's a postcard playground of sun-dappled oak ridges and mirror-calm water, a sprawling peninsula tucked between Kentucky Lake and Lake Barkley. The brochures practically sing about its 170,000 acres of pristine wilderness, boasting of endless hiking trails, scenic horseback loops, and enough largemouth bass to keep anglers grinning from dawn till dusk. It is, by all accounts, a slice of American paradise. Yet, once the sun drops below the tree line and paints the water in shades of orange and blood, the mood flips. The woods feel older, heavier, weighted down by a history the brochures leave out. They feel like they remember what happened here in the 60s, when the Tennessee Valley Authority came through with eminent domain and a mission. They remember the sound of generators and the slow, deliberate drowning of entire towns. Families who had lived on that land for generations were hauled away, their homes bulldozed, their tombstones and family plots swallowed by the rising waters of the new lakes. Front porch, memories, first kisses and Sunday sermons were all left to rot under 40 feet of murky water. It's that leftover grief, that silent outrage that you can't capture in a photograph. It's an itch in the dark, a feeling of being watched that keeps the fire burning low and makes you jump at every snapping twig. Somewhere in that primordial darkness lurks the one story every park ranger has heard in a hushed whisper, and nobody ever writes down in an official report the beast. Those who claim to have seen it describe something that defies biology. They swear it's 7 feet of coiled muscle and shadow, with a wolf-like jaw filled with teeth too long for its mouth, walking upright like it missed the evolutionary memo. It's covered in a shaggy, matted pelt the colour of dried blood and pond scum, and its eyes glow with the intensity of brake lights. But the smell is what they remember most, a rank, gut-wrenching stench of carrion and wet earth that can buckle your knees and make you gag from 100 yards away. How did it get here? The story splinters depending on who's doing the telling. One version, passed down through generations, says a Native American shaman cursed the settlers who murdered him for his land. As he lay dying, he swore he'd return on 2 legs and with fur to hunt their children for eternity. Another, more modern legend claims it all started with a sick settler during a cholera outbreak, whose fever burned so hot it cooked his mind and twisted his body into something else entirely. Something feral and immortal. Whatever the truth, the tracks keep showing up, clawed prints the size of dinner plates pressed deep into the mud, far too heavy for any known animal. Trees are found flayed, the bark stripped away in violent spirals as if they'd been put through an industrial blender. And every so often, a farmer will find a pasture full of cattle, carved into neat, bloodless pieces, a display of surgical precision that no predator could manage. Scientists cry hoax and point to black bears and local pranksters. Locals just nod, say a prayer, and load extra shells before heading into the woods. Both sides agree on one thing: something is out there. Fast forward to Labour Day weekend 1982. The Johnson family, a dad, mum and their 2 young kids, were looking for a last-minute getaway. They picked the loneliest loop of Trace Road, a spot known for its quiet and seclusion, and set up their camper. The first night was a picture of American wholesomeness, marshmallows toasted to perfection, corny knock-knock jokes echoing into the woods, the Milky Way brilliant in the moonless sky. The second night the woods answered back. It started subtly. First, the symphony of crickets and katydids just stopped. An unnatural, profound silence fell over the camp. Then came the sound, a growl that rolled in low and heavy. A vibration felt as much as it was heard, like thunder trapped in a drainpipe. The father, trying to be brave, waved it off. Probably just a coyote, he said, his voice a little too loud. The kids weren't buying it. The youngest kept asking his mom why the crickets had stopped chirping, his small voice trembling in the sudden stillness. Then the camp went silent for good. The next morning, the rangers found the father and son. They were strewn across the picnic table amidst the remnants of their dinner, their injuries so severe and bizarre that nobody could square them with a bear or cougar attack. The mother and daughter were gone. The only trace of the girl was a single pink sneaker lying near the fire pit. It wasn't until a rookie ranger, trying to escape the carnage, leaned against a sycamore tree to catch his breath that she was found. He looked up and there she was, 30 feet off the ground, folded neatly into a fork in the trunk like a broken doll that had been placed there with care. Within hours, unmarked, black SUVs with tinted windows sealed the loop. There was no press release, no obituary, no Amber Alert. Just a sudden, quiet closure of that particular campsite, barricaded with chain link and an orange sign that eventually faded to rust. The whispers started the same week. Locals spoke of government clean-up crews in hazmat suits, of unmarked vials being collected that contained unidentified lupine tissue, and of a family friend named Roger who swears on his life the bodies vanished from the county morgue at 3 a.m, taken by men in military uniforms. No death certificates were ever issued, no case file was ever created, nothing. Still, the story survives. It keeps bouncing around internet forums, late-night podcasts, and the shadowed corners of Reddit. A digital ghost refusing to be exorcised, because no matter how hard you try to bury a story like that, the smell of blood and pine has a way of sticking to the back of your throat. A decade later, in the mid-90s, 5 kids from nearby Murray State University thought it would be a rebellious thrill to camp in that same cursed stretch of woods. Armed with cheap beer, a boombox, and a book of ghost stories, their plan was to get drunk, scare each other silly, and maybe go for a skinny dip in Honker Lake. The first night, the stars were so bright they felt close enough to pocket, and their laughter echoed through the trees. Then came the footsteps. They were heavy, bipedal, and deliberate, crunching on the leaves just beyond the ring of firelight. They weren't the scattered steps of a deer, They walked like a man. The steps would move, then pause whenever the friends stopped talking to listen. By 2 a.m, the laughter had dried up. Something began to circle their tents, slow and methodical. It was dragging something, making a sound like a garden rake being scraped slowly and deliberately across the nylon fabric. One of the kids, a girl named Megan, finally worked up the courage to peg her flashlight through the mesh window of her tent. She came face to face with two red eyes 6 feet off the ground. They didn't scatter from the beam, they just stared back, reflecting her light like bicycle reflectors soaked in blood. Chaos erupted. They bolted in 5 different directions, a panicked explosion of bodies into the dark. Their flashlights bobbed like frantic fireflies, and their voices cracked into raw, primal screams that nobody could place as human. Megan was the first to make it out, running barefoot for miles until she collapsed at the ranger station, clutching a broken tent stake like a crucifix. When the sheriff's deputies finally went to investigate, the campsite looked pristine. The tents were zipped, the cooler was closed, the campfire was cold, there wasn't a single footprint out of place. University officials, eager to avoid a panic, chalked the whole incident up to mass hysteria fueled by alcohol and local legends. But the 5 kids, though they rarely speak of it, know what they saw. And every fall semester, as the leaves begin to turn, a new crop of freshmen hears the story whispered in the dorms after lights out. A chilling reminder that you can't erase a nightmare just because the paperwork says it never happened. Beyond the fangs and claws of the beast, LBL collects oddities and sorrows the way its floodplains collect driftwood. This land is a magnet for the strange. Night vision cameras left by ghost hunters capture floating orbs of light dancing above forgotten family plots, cemeteries now accessible only by boat. Hikers on remote trails report hearing the distinct sound of children giggling in the dense underbrush. When they turn, there's nothing there, just the unsettling echo of a lullaby you've never heard but somehow feel you know. One woman filed a report, later withdrawn, swearing she spent an afternoon on a cedar trail following a little girl in a faded calico dress. The girl kept looking back over her shoulder, smiling and beckoning, saying, "Come see my house, it's not far." The hiker followed, mesmerised, until she realised with a cold dread that the girl's footsteps were out of sync. Each footstep landed half a second too late, like the world had slipped a groove and she was watching a memory instead of a person. The hiker ran. Later, a deep dive into the local archives revealed that a child wearing that same dress had vanished without a trace in that exact spot in 1912. These aren't the quaint marketable tales that sell t-shirts in the gift shop. These are the stories told on back porches, the ones that keep locals locking their doors at dusk and avoiding certain roads after dark. So here we are, more than 40 years after the Johnsons' RV turned into a sealed-off crime scene, and the questions still outnumber the answers by a chilling margin. There is no paper trail, no official body count, no final chapter, just a long, unbroken string of campfires where the story is retold, mutating a little with each telling but always retaining its terrifying core. Was it a shaman's centuries-old curse finally coming due? A top-secret government experiment that escaped its enclosure and is now being covered up? Or is it something older, something the lake dredged up from the drowned towns when they dammed the rivers and flooded the past? Maybe in the end the answer doesn't matter. Maybe the only thing that matters is that the woods remember even when the paperwork is burned and the files are erased. The land holds its secrets close. You decide what's really roaming the land between the lakes after midnight. Drop your own run-ins with the beast or whatever else you've encountered in those woods down in the comments below. And if this story gave you that delicious, terrifying shiver, smash the like button, hit subscribe, and we'll see you on the next midnight hike. Just maybe bring an extra flashlight and don't camp alone. In 2002, 4 friends were fishing at the quiet Bolham Lake in Northumberland as darkness began to fall. It was just an ordinary evening filled with the gentle sounds of the English countryside, but what they were about to see was anything but ordinary. Suddenly, on the opposite bank, they saw a figure. It was motionless, and as they strained to see through the fading light, they realised its terrifying scale. It towered an estimated 8 feet tall. As the last of the light vanished, the creature's most horrifying feature was supposedly revealed. Its eyes began to glow a menacing red. The men, paralysed with fear, knew they had to escape through the dark woods that separated them from their car, all while feeling like they were being watched by the beast of Bowlam Lake. To understand the sheer terror of that encounter, you first have to picture the place where it happened. Bowlam Lake Country Park, nestled in the heart of rural Northumberland, seems like the definition of tranquility. Located about 20 miles from Newcastle and just 9 miles from the market town of Morpeth, it's a beloved destination for anyone looking to escape the city. Sprawling across more than 65 acres, the park's accessible paths wind around a picturesque lake that was created back in the 19th century. During the day, swans glide across the water, red squirrels and roe deer can be spotted in the woods, and the air is filled with the sound of woodland birds. It's a perfect slice of the idyllic English countryside. But when the sun goes down, Bowlam Lake transforms. The cheerful sounds of daytime visitors are replaced by an unnerving silence. The dense woods that surround the lake become a wall of impenetrable darkness. The water, once shimmering, turns into a black, motionless mirror reflecting nothing but the cold night sky. It's in this profound isolation that the park's gentle facade peels away, revealing a place that feels ancient, wild, and deeply unsettling. Some visitors have reported a menacing presence near the boardwalk area after dark, a feeling of being watched by unseen eyes. This unsettling atmosphere is amplified by the deep history that saturates the Northumberland landscape. This is a land of myth and legend, a region dotted with ancient Iron Age hill forts, mysterious stone carvings, and the ruins of castles that have witnessed centuries of bloodshed. It's a place where folklore isn't just a collection of old stories, but a living, breathing part of the local identity. Tales of malevolent fairies, ghostly monks, and terrible worm-like dragons are woven into the very fabric of the land. It's from this fertile ground of history and superstition that one of England's most terrifying modern legends would emerge. The story of the beast of Bowlam Lake isn't just an isolated account of a strange creature. It's the latest chapter in a long and dark history of unexplained phenomena in this enigmatic corner of Britain. The chilling account from the 4 fishermen in 2002 was the spark that lit the fuse, but it wasn't the first time something unnatural had been witnessed in the woods of Bowlam. Reports had been quietly circulating for years. One of the earliest documented encounters dates back to the summer of 1999. 2 young brothers, enjoying a walk after a family picnic, strayed from the main path. As they ventured deeper into the woods, they saw a tall, dark figure resting against a tree. At first they thought it was just a man, but as they got a better look, a wave of cold dread washed over them. The figure's face, they claimed, wasn't human. They described it as looking like an ape or a gorilla, with a squashed pug-like face covered in dark hair. It was breathing heavily, a low, guttural sound that seemed to vibrate in the air, and then its eyes supposedly began to glow. The 2 boys turned and ran for their lives, their idyllic summer day shattered by a vision from a nightmare. When the fisherman's story hit the local papers in 2002, initially dubbed the Geordie Yeti, a trickle of reports became a flood. More and more people came forward, emboldened to share their own terrifying experiences. Sightings were no longer confined to the dead of night. People began reporting encounters during the daylight hours as well. The creature had been given a name, the Beast of Bowlam Lake. The growing media attention soon attracted professional investigators. In January 2003, a man named Jonathan Downes, the director of the Devon-based Centre for Fortean Zoology, an organisation that investigates mystery animals, led an expedition to Northumberland. He assembled a team of 19 people, a mix of cryptozoologists, paranormal researchers, and journalists, hoping to get to the bottom of the strange reports. They arrived with a healthy dose of skepticism. Downs himself admitted he had a sinking suspicion that it could have been a practical joker in a monkey suit. But his job was to find the truth, whatever it might be. The team spent 5 days and nights scouring the area. They interviewed eyewitnesses, discovering the sightings went back even further than they thought. They deployed modern technology alongside more unconventional methods, but from the very beginning, things started to get strange. On the first day, the team reported that nearly every piece of electrical equipment they brought with them mysteriously malfunctioned. Batteries drained, phones died, and laptops refused to turn on. Team members heard odd noises in the undergrowth and noticed that the huge flocks of birds nesting in the trees would fall completely silent all at once, as if in response to an unseen predator. The initial skepticism of the investigators began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of unease. They weren't just investigating a story, they were experiencing something inexplicable firsthand. As the investigation deepened, a disturbingly consistent portrait of the creature began to emerge from the eyewitness accounts. The descriptions, often given by people who had never met and were years apart, shared a core set of terrifying features. First and foremost was its sheer size. Almost every witness described a bipedal, humanoid figure standing between 7 and 8 feet tall. It was consistently reported as being heavily built, with a powerful barrel chest and long, muscular arms. This wasn't a slender, ghostly apparition, it was a creature of immense physical presence. The second consistent detail was that it was covered in dark, thick hair. Some described it as black, others as dark brown, but the image of a large, hairy hominid was a constant thread running through the reports. This drew immediate comparisons to wildman legends from around the globe, most notably the North American Bigfoot, and the media quickly began referring to the creature as England's Bigfoot. But perhaps the most chilling and frequently mentioned feature was its eyes. Witness after witness reported seeing eyes that glowed in the dark, usually a menacing, fiery red. This detail was particularly unnerving because it suggests something beyond the realm of known biology. While some animals' eyes reflect light, witnesses insisted these eyes were self-illuminating, glowing from within. Beyond the verbal testimonies, there were also claims of physical evidence, though none of it has been scientifically verified. People reported finding strange footprints in the soft earth around the lake. During their 2003 expedition, Jonathan Downs' team photographed several unusual prints. Interestingly, they speculated that the prints appeared to be from different animals, leading them to wonder if more than one of these creatures inhabited the woods. Others claimed to have found large branches bent or snapped in unnatural ways, and even what they described as makeshift nests woven from sticks and leaves, crude structures that hinted at some form of animal intelligence at work. Adding to this body of anecdotal evidence was the consistent emotional and psychological impact on the witnesses. One man walking his dog saw a tall, man-shaped figure, and his dog refused to go any further, planting its feet in absolute terror. A mother and her young son stumbled upon the strange, interwoven branch structures and were overcome with a palpable sense of dread, forcing them to flee immediately. Time and again, people who encountered the beast spoke of an overwhelming feeling of menace, a primal fear that went beyond simply being startled. They felt they were in the presence of something ancient, powerful, and deeply hostile. The evidence wasn't just in what they saw or found, it was in the terror that lingered long after the encounter was over. With a growing file of witness statements and perplexing, unverified evidence, investigators faced a critical question. What exactly is the Beast of Bolam Lake? The theories that emerged were as varied and strange as the sightings themselves, falling into 3 main categories: the biological, the hoax, and the supernatural. The most straightforward explanation, favoured by some cryptozoologists, is that the beast is a flesh and blood animal, an unknown hominid species. Proponents point to the consistent physical descriptions as evidence of a real, biological creature. However, this theory runs into a huge problem: ecology. Even at over 65 acres, experts argue Bowlam Lakes Park is nowhere near large enough to sustain a single large primate, let alone a breeding population necessary for a species to survive undiscovered. There just isn't enough food, space, or isolation. The idea of an escaped ape was also quickly discounted, as no local zoos had reported any missing animals. This leads to the second major theory: a hoax. Jonathan Downes was initially wary of a practical joke. In early 2003, 2 local teenagers even admitted to hiring a gorilla costume for an arts project, taking photos of themselves in a different Northumberland forest. They stressed they weren't responsible for the Bowlam Lake sightings, but their story showed how easily such a myth could be faked. While a hoax might explain some sightings, it struggles to account for the number of reports over several years, the physical claims, and the genuinely terrified reactions of so many independent witnesses. This is where the third, and perhaps most compelling theory comes into play: the paranormal. Many researchers, including Jonathan Downes after his own bizarre experience, began to lean away from a biological explanation. A significant number of witnesses described the creature as being shadow-like or ghostly. One woman who saw the creature with her son in 2003 described it not as a hairy beast, but as a huge black figure like an enormous shadow, only dark and solid. This description hints at something not entirely physical. This paranormal theory is bolstered by the area's rich folklore. Some have speculated that the beast could be a genius loce, or a guardian spirit of the land. This is an idea that fits with a wider British tradition of landscapes inhabited by otherworldly creatures. One specific legend from the region is that of the Duergar, malevolent dwarves said to lure travellers off their paths. While there's no historical link between Duergar lore and the Bowlam Lake sightings, the speculation shows how the lines between cryptozoology and the paranormal began to blur, suggesting the truth might be far stranger than a simple monster. The peak of the Centre for Fortean Zoology's 5-day investigation wouldn't come from a plaster cast or a blurry photo. It would arrive in a few heart-stopping seconds of raw, terrifying experience, an event that would cement the beast of Bowlam Lake into legend. It was dusk. On the final evening of their expedition in January 2003, the temperature had plummeted and patches of snow lay on the ground. The team of 19 had regrouped near the car park as the daylight faded. The thousands of birds nesting in the canopy, which had been making a tremendous racket moments before, suddenly fell silent. All at once. At that exact moment, a team member from the Twilight World's Paranormal Research Society shouted out. He'd seen movement in the tree line, something big and something upright. On Jonathan Downes' command, multiple high-powered headlights were switched on, illuminating the clearing, and then everyone saw it. A huge humanoid creature burst from the trees and sprinted across the open space. Its movement was described as impossibly fast and sharp. Witnesses claimed it covered a distance of at least 130 feet in just a few seconds, moving with a speed that seemed to defy what a human could do. It ran from right to left across the clearing and vanished back into the woods. Then, just as shockingly, it reappeared moments later, running back in the opposite direction before disappearing for good. The entire encounter lasted only a few seconds, so fast that only 5 of the 19 team members, including Downes, claimed to get a clear look. But for those 5, the image was burned into their minds. Downes would later struggle for words to describe what he'd witnessed, calling it so far out of the normal run of human experiences that there simply are not adequate words to describe it. He described a dark, man-shaped object, about 7.5 feet tall, with a powerful barrel chest and thick limbs. What struck him most was the unreality of the figure. He saw no glowing eyes and couldn't tell if it was covered in hair. He described its face as incredibly flat and angular, almost two-dimensional. He said it was as if someone had projected a humanoid-shaped piece of nothingness onto the landscape using a fast-forward button. It was there, but it didn't seem solid. The encounter was a success, confirming that something was in the woods. But what that something was had now become an even deeper and more frightening mystery. According to Downes, it was not an ape, and it was not a man in a suit. It was something else. The mystery of Bowlam Lake continues to this day. Decades have passed, but the woods remain silent, holding on to their secret. What do you think these witnesses saw? Was it a flesh and blood creature, an undiscovered British ape? Or was it something more ethereal, a spirit of the land, or a ghost from Northumberland's haunted past? Let us know your theories in the comments below. And if you want to explore more of Britain's darkest and most baffling mysteries, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. In the years since the 2003 investigation, sightings of the beast of Bowlam Lake have dwindled. The media frenzy has died down, and the park has largely returned to its peaceful, daytime persona. Yet, the legend endures, whispered among locals and debated in online forums. The occasional new witness comes forward, reporting a strange dark shape in the woods, or an inexplicable feeling of being watched, keeping the chilling memory alive. No creature has ever been captured. No definitive proof has ever been found. The investigation that began with skepticism ended with a conclusion that was perhaps more unsettling than finding a real monster. The lead investigator believed they had witnessed something that seemingly defied the laws of our reality. Bowlam Lake stands as a stark reminder that even in a country as thoroughly explored as England, there are still pockets of wilderness that hold deep mysteries. It shows that the line between the known and the unknown, between folklore and fact, can sometimes be terrifyingly thin. Was the beast an English Bigfoot clinging to existence on the edge of our world, a paranormal apparition forever bound to its ancient territory? Or was it all simply a case of mass hysteria fueled by local folklore and a few practical jokers? The truth, whatever it may be, remains hidden in the shadows of the Northumberland woods, and perhaps that's where it will stay. The headlights slice through the darkness on a quiet country road, and that's when she sees it. Hunched over on the shoulder, it's big, way too big to be a dog. As her car gets closer, the thing slowly stands up on two muscular legs. It's covered in dark matted fur, with the head of a wolf, and then it turns and looks right at her. It doesn't run away into the woods, it runs into the road and starts chasing her car. In the quiet rural landscapes of Walworth County, Wisconsin, there's a stretch of pavement that's become legendary for all the wrong reasons. It's called Bray Road. For decades, this unassuming country lane near the town of Elkhorn has been the centre of a chilling and persistent mystery. Since the 1980s, and maybe even earlier, drivers and locals have reported terrifying encounters with a creature that defies any easy explanation. They describe a massive, hairy, wolf-like being that can stand and run on two legs, a creature with glowing eyes, a muscular frame, and a terrifying habit of chasing cars. It's been called a dogman, a cryptid, even a real-life werewolf, but it's best known by the name of the road it haunts, the Beast of Bray Road. Over the years, the stories have piled up, creating a case file filled with dozens of terrifying eyewitness accounts. They're stories of close calls on dark nights, of strange figures in cornfields, and of claw marks left gouged into car doors. So are these genuine encounters with an unknown animal? Or are they just misidentification, local folklore, or something else entirely? Tonight, we're opening the case file on one of America's most compelling modern legends to figure out what's really happening on Bray Road. The modern wave of sightings that put Bray Road on the map really kicked off in the late 1980s and early 1990s. The reports became so frequent that they caught the attention of a local newspaper, the Walworth County Week. The paper assigned a reporter named Linda Godfrey to investigate what seemed like a bunch of strange, but probably unrelated, animal sightings. Godfrey, who started out as a skeptic, began interviewing the witnesses. What she found wasn't a series of random tales, but a pattern. The descriptions were shockingly consistent: a large, muscular, two-legged canine with dark fur and a wolf's head. The witnesses she talked to were credible, everyday people who were genuinely terrified by what they'd seen. Her newspaper articles became a sensation, eventually leading to her definitive book on the subject, The Beast of Bray Road, Tailing Wisconsin's Werewolf. It was Godfrey's work that turned a local spooky story into a nationwide phenomenon. But the seeds of the legend were planted long before the 80s. The timeline of this creature, or something very much like it, seems to stretch back decades earlier. One of the first widely cited encounters happened in 1936 in neighbouring Jefferson County. A night watchman at the St. Coletta School for Exceptional Children, a man named Mark Shackleman, was making his rounds near a series of ancient Native American burial mounds on the property. He saw a figure hunched over one of the mounds, digging at the dirt. At first he thought it was a person, but as he got closer, the figure stood up. It was over 6 feet tall, covered in dark, shaggy hair, with a muscular body, but the snarling face of a wolf. Shackleman, a devout man, claimed the creature smelled of rotting meat and even uttered a 3-syllable guttural sound that he heard as Gadara, with the accent on the second syllable. He backed away, praying as the beast watched him before vanishing into the night. This historical account, buried for decades, shares unsettling similarities with the reports from Bray Road over 50 years later. A bipedal canine, an imposing height, and an aura of pure menace. These early accounts laid the foundation for the mystery. Was Mark Shackleman the first documented witness to the beast? Or was he seeing something even older, a creature tied to the very land itself? The sightings that followed would only deepen the mystery and ramp up the fear. The question wasn't if people were seeing something, but what they were seeing. As Linda Godfrey's investigation went on, the sheer number and consistency of the eyewitness accounts became impossible to just brush aside. These weren't vague shadows in the distance. They were harrowing, up-close encounters that left people shaken for years. Let's look at some of the most compelling reports, treating each one as a case file in this strange investigation. Our first file is about Laurie Endrizi, a local bar manager driving home on Bray Road in 1989. It was a routine drive she knew well, but on this night, her headlights caught a figure kneeling on the shoulder. Her first thought was that it was a person who might need help. As she slowed down, she got a better look. She was only about 6 feet away when she realised her mistake. It wasn't a person. It was covered in greyish-brown fur and was incredibly muscular, with a broad chest and shoulders. Then it turned its head and looked right at her. She saw a long, wolf-like snout, pointed ears and fangs, but the most terrifying part was its eyes. They were intelligent and they glowed with a sickly yellow light in her headlights. Endrizi slammed on the gas and fled. Her account is crucial because it established key details that would appear over and over. The kneeling posture, the grey-brown fur, the wolf-like head, and those piercing, intelligent eyes. Also, in 1989, a dairy farmer named Scott Bray, whose family the road is named after, had his own unsettling experience. He saw what he first wrote off as a strange-looking dog in his pasture near Bray Road. But the longer he looked, the more unnatural it seemed. It was much bigger than a German shepherd, with a powerful, deep chest. It moved with a purpose, almost like it was surveying its territory. After it disappeared, Bray went out to the pasture and found huge, unidentifiable footprints in the soil, a sign that something very large and very unusual had been on his property. Around the same time, another local named Russell Jest had an even more direct encounter. While near a thicket of bushes, he heard a loud rustling. Suddenly, a beast emerged, rising up on its hind legs. Jest described it as being covered in black and grey fur, larger than any dog he'd ever seen, but unlike in other cases, this creature didn't act aggressively. After standing for a moment, it dropped back to all fours and calmly walked toward Bray Road, as if it was just going about its business. This sighting is important because it highlights the creature's ability to switch from 4 legs to 2 with ease, a key feature in many dogman reports. Perhaps the most iconic and terrifying encounters are the ones where the Beast of Bray Road gives chase. These reports cemented its reputation as a uniquely aggressive cryptid, one that isn't afraid of people or their cars. One of the most famous cases involved a woman named Dorothy Gibson. In 1999, while driving on Bray Road, she felt a sudden, hard thud against her car, thinking she'd hit an animal. When she got out to check, she saw a massive, hairy figure charging at her out of the darkness. She scrambled back into her car just as the creature lunged. She claimed it leaped onto the trunk of her car, its claws scraping against the metal as it struggled for a grip on the rain-slicked surface before sliding off. When she later inspected her car, she found deep, distinct claw marks gouged into the trunk. In 1990, a group of teenagers, led by an 11-year-old named Heather Bowie, added another dramatic chase to the files. They were near Loveland Road, not far from Bray Road, when they saw what they thought was a big dog in a cornfield and called out to it. The creature stopped, looked at them, and then did something impossible. It stood up on its hind legs. It took a few wobbly steps toward them before dropping back to all fours and charging. The terrified kids ran for their lives. The beast chased them about halfway to Bowie's house before it suddenly stopped and vanished. These case files are just a sample of the dozens of sightings. But now we have to look at the other side, the skeptical explanations. The most common theory is simple misidentification. Skeptics argue that witnesses are just seeing known animals under stressful conditions. The prime suspects are grey wolves, which are occasionally found in Wisconsin, or large feral dogs. An unusually large wolf, especially one standing on its hind legs for a moment, could easily be mistaken for a monster in the dark. Another theory points to the American black bear. Bears are known to stand on their hind legs, and their size and dark fur match many descriptions. A bear with mange, a skin disease that causes hair loss, could look especially grotesque and unnatural. This might also explain why some witnesses see the creature eating roadkill, a common behaviour for bears. However, these explanations start to fall apart when you look closer at the most credible accounts. Could a bear really chase a car at high speed? Lori Endritze was only 6 feet from the creature. She's adamant its face was long and snouty like a wolf, not rounded like a bear's. Plus, many witnesses describe a creature with distinctly canine, backward-bending legs, a feature that neither a bear nor a person in a suit would have. This is the heart of the Bray Road mystery. The skeptical theories are logical, but they don't quite explain the most specific, recurring details from eyewitnesses. The consistency is what makes the legend so hard to dismiss. The case files from the 80s and 90s are compelling, but to really grasp the scale of this mystery, we have to go back to that 1936 account from Mark Shackleman. His encounter is arguably the most chilling and strange of them all. Remember, Shackleman saw the creature digging at an ancient burial mound. On his first sighting, he said it ran like a man, but he returned the next night. The creature was there again. This time, it stood to its full height, and he got a better look. He described its hands as strangely formed. His son later relayed that his father described the first and fifth fingers as shriveled or curled up. It smelled of decomposed meat, and then it made that sound he perceived as speech, the 3-syllable growl, Gadara. Shackleman said that as he began to pray, the creature sneered at him before finally backing away. This account adds elements that go far beyond a simple monster sighting, desecrating a grave, the strange vocalization, the reaction to prayer. These details push the story into the realm of the supernatural. It suggests the beast might not just be an undiscovered animal, but something with intelligence and a malevolent purpose. Linda Godfrey herself noted that the proximity of so many sightings to these ancient mounds seemed like more than a coincidence. It raises a terrifying question. Is this creature a product of nature, or is it tied to a darker, ancient energy in the land itself? In the years since the main wave of sightings, the reports have slowed, but never stopped. Encounters were still being reported in Walworth County as recently as 2018 and 2020, with witnesses describing the same large, hair-covered, upright creature. The legend has become a permanent part of Wisconsin folklore, inspiring books, documentaries, and even a horror film. So, where does that leave us? We have a collection of stories that are too consistent to be a string of hoaxes, yet too strange to be easily explained by science. There's no body, no undisputed DNA, no clear photograph. There are only the accounts of terrified witnesses and the deep, unsettling claw marks they say the beast left behind. The theories remain. Is it a misidentified bear with mange, an escaped science experiment, or is it something more? A surviving relic species, a creature from Native American folklore, or a genuine lycanthrope, a real American werewolf? The truth about the Beast of Bray Road remains elusive, hidden somewhere in the dark woods and misty cornfields of rural Wisconsin. The eyewitnesses, many now older, still stand by their stories with unwavering conviction. They know what they saw on that dark road. The story of the Beast of Bray Road is more than just a monster hunt. It's a powerful reminder that even in our modern world, the shadows can still hold secrets. It taps into a primal fear, the fear of the predator in the dark, of something that looks almost human, but isn't. So what is the Beast of Bray Road? A misidentified animal, a lingering piece of folklore, or something else entirely? For now, it remains an open case file, a chilling question mark haunting a quiet country road. What do you believe? Have you ever seen something you couldn't explain? Share your story and your theories in the comments below. Imagine you're alone, high on a desolate mountain path. The mist rolls in, thick and silent, swallowing the world around you. Your only companions are the sound of your own breathing and the crunch of your boots on the gravel. But then, you hear it. Another set of footsteps, heavy and slow, echoing your own. You stop. The footsteps continue for a moment, then fall silent. You're sure you're alone, but the feeling of being watched, of a tall shadow, just at the edge of your vision, is overwhelming. For over a century, climbers on the UK's second highest mountain have told this exact same terrifying story, a story of the Grey Man of Ben Macdui. In the heart of the Scottish Highlands lies the Cairngorms, a vast Arctic wilderness of windswept peaks. Towering above them all is Ben Macdui, the second highest mountain in the entire British Isles. At 1,309 metres, it's a place of stark, unforgiving beauty, often battered by brutal winds and smothered in a thick, disorienting fog. But it's not just the weather climbers need to be wary of. For generations, this mountain has been home to a chilling legend, a story whispered from one person to the next. It's the legend of Amphia Leath Mór, a Gaelic name that translates to the Big Grey Man. This isn't a story of a gentle giant or a simple mountain spirit. The tales describe a presence that inspires a unique and potent kind of terror. Encounters are marked by an overwhelming sense of dread, the unnerving sound of unseen footsteps, and, in rare cases, the fleeting sight of a tall, shadowy figure moving through the mist. The legend is deeply woven into the fabric of Scottish folklore, a chilling reminder that even in the most remote corners of the world, you might not be as alone as you think. So, is it just a story, or is there something more to the tales from Ben Macdui? For many years, the Grey Man was a creature of local folklore, a bogeyman for shepherds. That all changed in 1925, when one of the most respected men in Britain stood before the Cairngorm Club and shared a story that gave the legend chilling credibility. That man was Professor J. Norman Colley. Now, Colley was not a man prone to wild tales. He was a distinguished scientist, a professor of organic chemistry, a fellow of the Royal Society, and the man behind the first ever medical X-ray photograph. He was also a world-renowned mountaineer. His words carried weight. He told everyone about an experience he'd had way back in 1891 while coming down from the summit of Ben Macdui alone. "I was returning from the cairn on the summit in a mist," he began. "When I began to think, I heard something else than merely the noise of my own footsteps." He described hearing a crunching sound every few steps he took, but it wasn't his. It sounded like someone was following him, but taking steps that were 3 or 4 times the length of his own. At first he brushed it off. He stopped, listened, and heard nothing. He looked back into the dense fog and saw nothing. But as he walked on, the eerie crunching returned, and it felt like it was getting closer. An unexplainable terror seized him. He wrote, I was seized with terror and took to my heels, staggering blindly among the boulders for 4 or 5 miles. He fled the mountain, vowing never to return to the top alone. Colley finished his speech with a haunting statement. Whatever you make of it, I do not know, but there is something very queer about the top of Ben Macdui. Professor Colley's public confession opened the floodgates. His flawless reputation gave others the courage to share their own unsettling experiences. Suddenly, it was clear his encounter wasn't a one-off. More reports surfaced, many from seasoned climbers who knew the mountain inside and out, and as the stories piled up, a disturbing pattern emerged. In 1943, during World War II, naturalist and mountaineer Alexander Tunian was on Ben Macdui. As mist enveloped the peak, he heard an odd sound and felt an oppressive atmosphere. Suddenly, a strange shape loomed out of the fog and charged at him. In a moment of pure panic, Tunian pulled out a revolver and fired 3 times at the figure. When it kept coming, he turned and fled down the mountain in terror. Just 2 years later, in 1945, Peter Densham, who was part of a wartime rescue team, was on the mountain when a heavy mist rolled in. He too heard strange crunching noises and was overcome by a wave of panic so strong it made him flee the summit. He even reported feeling a presence trying to push him toward the edge of a cliff. Another climber, Richard Frere, wrote about his experience in 1948. He didn't see anything, but he felt an utterly abstract but intensely real presence nearby, accompanied by a strange, high-pitched singing note. This feeling of being watched, this unseen presence, became the most common part of the reports. While physical descriptions were rare, they were startlingly consistent when they did happen. A humanoid figure, impossibly tall, sometimes over 10 feet, with long limbs and dark skin or hair. But for most, the grey man was an invisible terror. Its presence felt more like a crushing weight on the soul than seen with the eyes. With so many credible people reporting similar experiences, the question has to be asked, what is going on up on Ben Macdui? Is it really home to a mysterious creature, or could there be a scientific reason for this century-old legend? The most common theory for the visual sightings is a natural optical illusion called the Brocken spectre. This happens when you're standing on a high ridge with the sun behind you and your shadow gets cast onto the mist below. Because of perspective and the way light bounces off water droplets, the shadow can look gigantic and eerily human-shaped, sometimes with a halo of light around it. The poet James Hogg even described seeing a giant blackamoor on a mountain way back in 1791, so we know people have been seeing this for a long time. A Brocken spectre could definitely explain why someone might see a giant, shadowy figure in the mist. Another scientific explanation points to infrasound, sound at a frequency so low humans can't hear it, but our bodies can feel it. These low-frequency sound waves can be created by wind whipping around the mountain's rock formations. Studies have shown that being exposed to infrasound can cause feelings of anxiety, paranoia, and dread, the exact emotions nearly every witness of the Grey Man reports. Then there's the simple but powerful effect of the environment itself. Ben Macdui is a harsh and isolating place. A lone climber who's tired, maybe feeling the effects of the altitude and wrapped in a thick, sensory-depriving fog is going to be highly suggestible. The mind can play tricks. The crunch of your own footsteps echoing off rocks could easily be mistaken for something more sinister. But these explanations don't quite add up for everyone. The Brocken spectre doesn't explain the footsteps that don't match your own. While infrasound can explain the feeling of dread, it doesn't account for the specific sounds people report, and for experienced mountaineers like Colley, who know the mountain's tricks, misinterpreting natural sounds seems unlikely. The mystery, it seems, isn't so easily dismissed. You'd think that in our hyper-connected world, a legend like the Grey Man would just fade away, but the stories keep coming. The legend is alive and well, not just in books, but in the experiences of modern climbers who still venture onto the mountain. While it's harder to get named first-hand accounts these days, anecdotal stories keep popping up in online forums and social media groups. In September 2022, a guest at the nearby Mar Lodge estate wrote a chilling entry on the lodge's wildlife sightings board. Right next to the usual notes about eagles and squirrels, they wrote that they had seen a creepy grey silhouette at the peak of Ben Macdui. The lodge even shared a picture of the entry online, sparking a whole new wave of discussion. Online hiking and paranormal communities are filled with stories from people who've had weird experiences in the Cairngorms. One person described camping on the plateau and hearing two distinct male voices talking clearly in the wind, even though they were totally alone. Another told of standing outside a mountain shelter at night and catching a glimpse of a tall, grey figure out of the corner of their eye, only for it to vanish when they turned to look straight at it. These modern accounts often sound just like the classic encounters. They talk about a sudden, weird drop in temperature, a suffocating sense of dread, the feeling of being watched by something intelligent, and that unmistakable sound of footsteps where there shouldn't be any. The gear has changed. Hikers now have GPS and smartphones, but the mountain and its mysteries haven't. The Grey Man has gone from a piece of old folklore to a modern mountain legend, proving that even today, some places still hold a sense of deep and unsettling mystery. These stories, spanning more than a century, paint a consistent and chilling picture. It really does seem like something is stalking the slopes of Ben Macdui. If you enjoyed this look into one of the UK's most enduring mysteries, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more explorations into the unexplained. And now we want to hear from you. Have you ever had a strange experience in a remote place? Have you ever felt that overwhelming sense of being watched? Share your own stories in the comments below. So, what is the Grey Man of Ben Macdui? Is it a cryptid, a Scottish cousin to the Yeti or Bigfoot, guarding its territory? Is it a mountain spirit, a supernatural being tied to the ancient landscape itself? Or is it all just a perfect storm of natural phenomena, optical illusions, infrasound, and psychological stress, creating a shared experience for those who climb the misty peak? Maybe the most unsettling part of the Grey Man legend is that we just don't know. There's no definitive proof, only a long and compelling history of personal stories. The scientific explanations are plausible, but they feel incomplete. They don't quite capture the sheer terror and specific details, like the footsteps taking strides 4 times longer than a human's, that so many credible witnesses have reported. Those details linger, defying any easy answer. The legend survives because it taps into a primal fear, being alone in a vast, indifferent wilderness, only to find out you might not be alone after all. It's a story that lives in the grey area between perception and reality, between folklore and fact. What do you think is out there on the slopes of Ben Macdui? A trick of the light, a figment of a tired mind, or something else entirely? For now, the Grey Man remains hidden in the mist, a tall, shadowy question at the very top of the British Isles.
911, what are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal or?
I can't tell. All I know is that my central light came on and I just happened to glimpse and see this thing running across the yard. A good-sized man or something. It looks like a man. I don't know what it was, just that it ran across the yard.
Okay. You've had problems in the neighborhood before?
Yeah, my dog was killed here just recently. I don't know what it was. Whatever it is, it's running. I couldn't catch it if I was going to chase it. But whatever it was standing up. I'm out here looking through the window now and I don't see anything. I don't want to go outside. Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Dio!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh. Okay, hang on.
He's right...
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, God, he's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
He's looking at me.
Oh, and the guy is on foot.
I don't know what... It's a big... real big person. That's all I can say.
Okay, but it is a person.
Yeah, I'd say it was a person, somebody really big. But he's all in black.
Is he a black male or a white male? Did you actually see whether, or was he just wearing black?
He's all black and he's big. He is big.
In 1957, a quiet man named William Rowe walked into a lawyer's office in Alberta, Canada. He wasn't there for a will or a property dispute. He raised his right hand, swore under oath, and then calmly stated he'd stared eye to eye with a 6-foot-tall, hair-covered creature that walked like a human and ate like a vegetarian. No blurry photos, no plaster casts of footprints, no souvenir, just a signed affidavit and a story that still keeps researchers arguing decades later. We're going to unpack that sworn statement line by line to see whether Mica Mountain gave us a hoax, a hallucination, or something science still can't quite file away. Most people think Bigfoot stories start with a grainy, shaky photo or a campfire tale whispered in the dark. This one starts with a notary public and the solemn weight of a legal document. William Rowe was no city tourist, no wide-eyed urbanite lost in the woods. This was a man who'd hunted since boyhood, a seasoned outdoorsman who'd trapped alone through brutal Canadian winters. He could tell a black bear from a grizzly at 200 yards, probably in his sleep. His life, quite literally, depended on his keen observation skills and his ability to distinguish between the ordinary and the truly dangerous. So, when October 3rd, 1955 found him prospecting a ridge above Tet John Cache, British Columbia, he wasn't looking for monsters. He was hoping those rusty streaks in the rock meant iron, and with iron, a paycheck. Instead, he got the kind of tale that normally ends with, "and then I woke up in a cold sweat." Except Rowe insisted it happened in broad daylight. 2 years later, he put it on paper, under penalty of perjury. That document, it's still floating around archives today, water-stained, creased, and stubbornly refusing to be forgotten. It's a testament to a moment that challenged everything he thought he knew about the wilderness he loved. The approach. Rowe's account begins early. He said he left his camp at sunrise, the crisp mountain air filling his lungs, the promise of a new day's discovery ahead. He climbed through a landscape of dwarf pine and mica glitter, the tiny flakes of mineral crunching under his boots like broken bottles, a sound that, in retrospect, seems almost prophetic of the shattering of his worldview that was to come. By mid-morning, he reached a clearing, a natural bowl where berries grew thick and ripe, an irresistible bounty for any forest dweller. That's when he noticed it, the silence, not just the usual quiet of the backcountry, but an unnerving absence of sound. No chattering grey jays, no scolding squirrels, no rustle of small game. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Then he spotted it, what he first took to be a bear, rooting on all fours among the berry bushes, its dark fur blending into the shadows. He'd seen countless bears in his lifetime. This was just another day in the woods, right? But then the creature stood, and in that instant, Rowe realised bears don't have shoulders that broad, or arms that hang past the knees like long, heavy ropes. The thing was maybe 30 steps away, angled so he saw its profile, a flat face, utterly devoid of a snout, framed by dark hair with silver tips catching the sunlight like frost on a wire brush. He froze. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to hide, but he was rooted behind a windfall, his heart hammering loud enough, he wrote, to give me away. It was a sound, he imagined, that echoed through the unnatural silence of the clearing, but instead of running, instead of fleeing from this impossible sight, he watched. The creature kept plucking leaves, stuffing them into its mouth with a weirdly delicate motion, almost dainty considering its immense size. It was a detail that struck him then, and that he'd remember with vivid clarity later. And the feet, Rowe emphasised them specifically. Broader than mine, but shaped like a human's, only flatter, he recalled. He watched for maybe 10 minutes, an eternity in that suspended moment, afraid to even breathe. Then, the inevitable happened. A shifting breeze, a subtle change in the air current, carried his scent. The head snapped toward him, dark, intelligent eyes locking onto his. There was no aggression, no fear, not even surprise, just a slow, calm turn that seemed to say, "I know you're there." And then, as effortlessly as it had appeared, it melted back into the trees, moving, Rowe swore, smooth as water. Not a crash, not a lumbering retreat, but a fluid, almost ethereal disappearance. It was a sight that would haunt him and define him for the rest of his life. The description under oath. When William Rowe sat before that lawyer and put his hand on the Bible, he chose his words carefully, deliberately. He repeated one word 3 times, a word that would become a cornerstone of his testimony, human-like. This wasn't just an animal he'd seen, it was something that evoked a profound, unsettling resemblance to humanity. He estimated its height at 6 feet, maybe 6'1", a towering figure that commanded attention. Its weight? He guessed around 300 pounds, a solid, muscular build. The hair, he noted, wasn't uniform. It varied in length, short on the face, longer on the forearms, and longest, almost shaggy, on the thighs. A crucial detail, one that would spark endless debate, was the visible breasts. Based on this, he concluded it was female. He also stated he detected no odour, but quickly qualified that by adding, "Wind was in my favour," acknowledging that a scent might have been present but simply carried away from him. Vocally, it made no sound during the entire encounter, adding to the eerie, almost dreamlike quality of the sighting. And its movement, the gait was heel to toe, a distinctly human way of walking, not the pigeon-toed, shuffle skeptics often love to mock in less credible accounts. He noted knuckles that almost brushed the ground when it walked, suggesting incredibly long arms, yet the thumbs were opposable, like a man's but thicker. Think about that for a moment. Long arms and dexterous thumbs. These aren't details one casually invents. Rowe even drew a sketch in the margin of his affidavit. Crude, yes, but you can clearly see the intent. An upright, barrel-torsoed figure with long arms, a flat face, and notably no discernible neck. It was a quick, raw impression, but it conveyed the core visual. Under cross-examination later, a process designed to poke holes in a story Rowe famously refused to embellish. When pressed for more detail on the creature's colour, he simply said, "Dark brown with silver tips, full stop, no dramatic flourishes, no added details for effect." That kind of restraint, that refusal to go beyond what he genuinely witnessed, feels either incredibly honest or incredibly disciplined for a fabulist trying to spin a tall tale. It's a detail that has always resonated with those who find his account compelling. The aftermath, imagine what it must have been like. William Rowe, a man whose life was literally defined by his ability to navigate and understand the wilderness, had just witnessed something utterly, profoundly inexplicable. His immediate reaction wasn't curiosity or scientific inquiry, it was pure, primal flight. He hiked straight back to camp, his mind reeling, his body running on pure adrenaline. He threw his prospecting gear into a pack frame, abandoning any thought of iron ore or paychecks. Then, without stopping to eat, without pausing for rest, he walked 18 miles to the highway. 18 miles, driven by an urgency that only a truly shocking encounter could inspire. The first person he found was a Mountie, a symbol of order and authority in the vast Canadian wilderness. Rowe told him his story, raw and unfiltered. The Mountie, to his credit, logged the report, but you can almost hear the internal sigh. There was no checkbox for hairy humanoid on the official forms. For months, Rowe kept the story mostly to himself, fearing the ridicule that might hurt his ability to get guiding jobs, to earn a living in the very wilderness that had just betrayed his understanding. This wasn't a man seeking fame. This was a man trying to process the unbelievable. It was 2 years later, with encouragement from a brother who happened to be a constable, someone who understood the weight of legal statements, that Rowe finally decided to sign the affidavit. He figured a sworn statement might carry more weight if, by some chance, others saw the same thing. It was a quiet act, not a public declaration. He never wrote a book, never asked for money, never even joined the local wildlife club's monthly meetings to regale them with his tale. This wasn't about profit or prestige. By the late 60s, he'd moved to the Yukon, the rugged, remote Northern Territory, and kept mostly to himself, carrying his secret or his truth, until cancer got him in 1979. Researchers who later tracked down his family found them tired of the story, weary of the endless inquiries, but their testimony was unanimous. William never retracted a single syllable, not once, not for money, not for peace, not even on his deathbed. That unwavering consistency, that quiet conviction, speaks volumes. Comparing notes fast forward to today, decades after Rowe's encounter, how does his description line up with the vast tapestry of Bigfoot reports that have accumulated since? It's astonishing, actually. Over 700 Canadian Bigfoot reports mention silver-tipped hair, a surprisingly specific detail that you rarely, if ever, see in pop culture depictions of the creature. It's a recurring motif that predates most of the modern Bigfoot lore. The flat face, devoid of a snout, also aligns strikingly with coastal First Nations carvings, depictions of wild men of the woods that are older than Columbus himself. These aren't recent inventions, they're echoes from deep cultural memory. And the vegetarian angle? Rowe described the creature delicately plucking leaves and berries. Field biologists will tell you that coastal bears certainly gorge on berries and leaves in the fall, packing on calories for winter. But here's the kicker. None of those bears walk heel to toe, and none of them have opposable thumbs, not even close. Primatologists, the experts on apes and monkeys, are equally stumped. They'll tell you there's no known ape species that stands 6 feet 1, weighs 300 pounds, and lives solo in a temperate mountain forest in North America. It simply doesn't fit the scientific record. Of course, skeptics have their counter-arguments, and they're important to consider. They might suggest that a black bear with mange, a skin disease that causes hair loss and can make an animal look gaunt and strange, could appear oddly human at 30 yards, especially if the wind compresses its fur profile, creating an illusion of a flatter face and longer limbs. It's a plausible misidentification to a point, but mange bears typically lose their claws, and Rowe specifically noted broad, flat, human-shaped feet with intact nails. He wasn't just seeing a shape, he was observing specific anatomical details. So, what are we left with? Either William Rowe hallucinated an entire checklist of remarkably consistent details that would later be echoed independently by hundreds of others, or something truly outside the textbooks walked Mica Mountain that day. The sheer volume and consistency of these specific, non-bear-like details make the simple bear misidentification argument a lot harder to swallow. The credibility ledger. So why do some researchers, even today, treat Rowe's account almost like gospel, giving it a weight that other cryptid tales rarely receive? There are several compelling reasons that stack up on the pro side of the credibility ledger. First, and perhaps most crucially, is the timing. Rowe told his story, swore his affidavit, and lived his life before Bigfoot became a media punchline, before it was a pop culture phenomenon. He couldn't have copied tropes or embellished his tale with details gleaned from sensationalized documentaries or internet forums because they simply didn't exist yet. He was operating in a vacuum, reporting what he saw, not what he expected to see based on prevailing narratives. Second, consider the context of the witness himself. William Rowe was a prospector. In that profession, especially in the rugged Canadian wilderness of the 1950s, people lived or died by accurate observation. Misread a shadow, misjudge a track, misidentify an animal, and you might step on a grizzly, fall off a cliff, or starve. His very survival depended on his ability to perceive the world around him with unflinching clarity and precision. This wasn't a flighty individual prone to flights of fancy. This was a pragmatist, a survivor. Third, there's the affidavit itself. The act of swearing under oath is not to be taken lightly, especially in small-town Alberta in 1957. Lying on an affidavit is a criminal offence, a serious charge with real consequences. Rowe put his reputation and potentially his freedom on the line for this story. This wasn't a casual conversation over coffee, it was a formal, legal declaration. That carries immense weight. Finally, and perhaps most tellingly, is the minimal gain. Rowe never monetized his story. He didn't write books, he didn't go on talk shows, he didn't charge for interviews. He simply reported what he saw and then quietly went about his life. The motive for fabrication, for spinning such an extraordinary yarn, is incredibly thin when there's no clear personal profit or glory to be had. What would he have gained by lying other than potential ridicule and legal trouble? However, we can't ignore the debit side of the ledger, and it's a significant one. Despite the compelling nature of his testimony, we have zero physical evidence. No tracks were cast, no hair was snagged on a branch, no definitive photo exists, even though he carried a Kodak camera for documenting his claim. That absence, that frustrating lack of tangible proof, gnaws at the case like a beaver on pine. It's the Achilles heel of an otherwise remarkably consistent and credible account. It's the question mark that hangs over the entire encounter, forcing us to weigh the power of an eyewitness account against the cold, hard demands of scientific proof. If you've ever seen something you couldn't explain in the backcountry, something that made you question everything you thought you knew, drop a comment below. Cultural ripples. The impact of William Rowe's quiet affidavit wasn't immediate, but once it began to ripple outwards, it became a powerful current. Within months of Rowe's story leaking into the public consciousness, the Vancouver papers ran the first headline using the word Sasquatch in quotes, a direct nod to the burgeoning interest sparked by Rowe's detailed description. He might not have sought fame, but his account certainly ignited a cultural conversation. Then, in 1958, hundreds of miles south, construction workers at Bluff Creek, California, found oversized tracks and coined a new, equally iconic term, Bigfoot. It wasn't a coincidence. They borrowed details, the flat feet, the long arms, straight from Rowe's affidavit, which had circulated among early researchers. Rowe's initial solitary encounter was already becoming the template. Fast forward to 1967 and the legendary Patterson-Gimlin film emerges, capturing a bipedal, hair-covered creature in Northern California. What's fascinating is how closely it echoed Rowe's female description. The visible breasts, the dark hair, the calm, unhurried retreat. Whether Patterson and Gimlin filmed a genuinely matching animal or if their perception was influenced by the now-established Rowe narrative, the cultural loop was unequivocally set. William Rowe's account, once a solitary sworn statement, became the foundational template against which new reports, new sightings and new films would be measured. Even the critically acclaimed 2021 documentary Sasquatch, which explores the dark underbelly of the legend, opens with a distinct nod to Mica Mountain, recognizing the enduring power of Rowe's original testimony. It's proof that this story still pays narrative rent, still holds sway in the collective imagination, decades after that quiet man spoke his truth. Science says, for mainstream biology, the standard is clear, unyielding, and often frustratingly out of reach for cryptid enthusiasts. They want a body, a type specimen, something tangible that can be examined, dissected, and classified. Without that, everything remains in the realm of anecdote and speculation. We've seen hair samples from similar cases return tantalizing results like unknown primate, but critics are quick to point out potential issues like contamination, degraded DNA, or even misidentification of known animal hairs. Footprints, some with incredibly detailed dermal ridges, have been cast and studied. Yet no peer-reviewed scientific journal has ever validated them as unequivocally non-human. And the audio recordings, the eerie howls and vocalizations that some attribute to Bigfoot. They exist, yes, but they could also be trucks on distant highways, owls, coyotes, or even human hoaxes. The bottom line for science is this: absence of a type specimen keeps the file firmly in limbo. William Rowe's affidavit, for all its compelling details and sworn sincerity, sits in the archive box labelled unverified. Why? Because extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence, and a piece of paper, however solemnly sworn, however detailed, however consistent, is still just paper. It's a record of an experience, not a physical specimen. Until that specimen appears, until undeniable, repeatable, verifiable evidence emerges, the scientific community, quite rightly, remains skeptical, viewing these accounts as intriguing puzzles rather than established facts. It's a tough barrier to cross, but it's the standard, and it's one that Rowe's account, for all its strengths, has yet to meet. The skeptic's reenactment. So, if it wasn't a Bigfoot, if it wasn't some unknown primate, what might William Rowe have seen that day on Mica Mountain? Let's try a skeptical reenactment, a plausible alternative. Picture this: a juvenile grizzly bear, perhaps, standing on its hind legs, reaching for berries. It's early fall, and the bear is shedding its summer fur in uneven, patchy clumps. The wind, a common feature of mountain clearings, mats the remaining coat, making limbs look longer and thinner than they actually are. The head, seen in profile through the dappled light and obscuring branches, can easily seem flattened, especially if the bear is slightly turned, obscuring its snout. If the animal is deeply engrossed in grubbing for berries, its forepaws might move in a way that, glimpsed through foliage, could indeed resemble hands, delicate in their plucking. When it eventually drops to all fours and ambles off, the heel-to-toe illusion might occur if its loose heel pads hit the ground first in its lumbering gait. Now add adrenaline. The human brain, confronted with an unexpected, vaguely human-shaped figure in a moment of high stress, is incredibly adept at stitching together fuzzy data, filling in the blanks, and creating a coherent, bipedal figure out of ambiguous stimuli. It's how optical illusions work, how we see faces in clouds, and how fear can distort perception. But here's the problem: the persistent nagging details that trip up even the most elegant, skeptical explanation. Bears have claws, long and sharp, designed for digging and tearing. Rowe explicitly noted broad, flat, human-shaped feet with intact nails, not claws. And what about the prints? The Mounties found no prints at all. Is that convenient for a fabricated story, or damning for the idea of a physical animal? It depends entirely on your bias. If it was a bear, even a mangy one, it would have left bear prints, claws and all. Rowe's detailed description of the feet remains a significant hurdle for the misidentified bear theory, a detail that simply doesn't align with known ursine anatomy. The believer's counter. On the flip side of that skeptical coin, the believer's counter-argument often starts with a deep dive into history and culture. Indigenous stories across British Columbia, tales passed down through generations long before European prospectors like Rowe ever set foot in the territory, describe wild men or Sasquatch with remarkable consistency. These figures are often depicted with flat faces, long hair, and notably gentle, plant-based diets. These aren't recent inventions. They are part of a cultural memory that stretches back centuries, predating any modern media influence. Now, consider Rowe's specific details again: the silver-tipped guard hairs, the lack of a discernible neck, the visible female breasts. These aren't standard bear descriptors by any stretch of the imagination. If Rowe simply invented the tale, he somehow guessed an anatomical profile that not only aligns with ancient indigenous law, but also matches dozens of later independent reports. And these aren't just from excited tourists. Some come from highly credible sources like experienced pilots flying over remote terrain, or seasoned wildlife biologists who know the local fauna intimately. Are we to believe that Rowe, a simple prospector, somehow started the greatest cultural mirage of the 20th century, creating a detailed template that countless others would unknowingly replicate for decades? Or is it more plausible that he simply wrote down what he saw, unfiltered, unembellished, a raw account of an encounter with a relic species that our modern science has yet to fully acknowledge? The sheer statistical improbability of such consistency across so many independent accounts, spanning centuries and diverse cultures, gives serious pause to the easy dismissal. So, where does that leave us, all these decades later? We have a sworn statement, a legal document signed under penalty of perjury, brimming with incredibly specific, consistent details. We have zero physical proof, no body, no definitive tracks, no hair sample that stands up to every scientific challenge. We have a witness who gained absolutely nothing from his incredible story, never wavered in his testimony, and quietly carried his truth to his grave. The easiest move, the most comfortable intellectual path, is to close the file and blame misidentification, to chalk it up to a startled man seeing a bear in poor light, his imagination doing the rest. But the honest move, the one that truly respects the complexity of the human experience and the mysteries of the natural world, is to admit that something remarkably consistent keeps showing up in these remote hills, a narrative thread that refuses to break. Maybe it's a bear seen through the distorting lens of fear and adrenaline. Maybe it's a shared hallucination, a potent folk memory projected onto the wilderness. Or maybe, just maybe, Mica Mountain still hosts a relic species, an incredibly elusive creature that learned long ago to dodge our rifles, our cameras, and our certainty. Either way, William Rowe's affidavit remains one of the clearest, calmest, and most stubbornly compelling blobs on the cryptid radar. It forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge, the boundaries of what we believe possible, and until the day someone hauls in a body, until science can definitively categorise it, all we have are stories, and this one at least is written under oath.